All right, peace to the family. If we can have the others to make their way in from next door, we're gonna get ready to start. If you can stand for libations, please. We pour libations to the universal Mother, Father, Creator, and we all say, Ashe. We pour libation to those directly in our bloodline, and I'll start by Onis Reynolds, Charles Reynolds, Eric Reynolds. Ashe, 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 Anthony Haney, Ashe. Be another. We pour libation to those great heroes and sheroes. I'd like to start with the Right Reverend Nat Turner, Ashe, Sherry Turner, Ashe, Madam Walker, Ashe, Amos Wilson, Ashe, Malcolm X, Ashe, 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 Dr. Barshango, Ashe, Del Jones, Ashe, Ashe, Dr. Welson, Ashe, 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 Ashe. And we pour libation back to the universal Mother, Father, Creator. We all say, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. You can remain standing for the African pledge. Put your black fist in the air. Repeat after me. And repeat the words, because we're going to go into this new year really representing, all right? 2017. I pledge allegiance to my people. The African race. The original man and woman of the earth. And the founders of civilization. I pledge to continue to struggle, which will help to bring my beloved brothers and sisters to total freedom. I pledge to study and discipline myself mentally, physically, and spiritually, so I may grow into a soldier for justice. Because my people need strong and intelligent warriors. I pledge to live my life standing tall. For a person on his or her knees is not respected. And if I am challenged, I must say, I will not surrender my position nor my dignity, but instead, we shall endure until the final victory is won. Ashe. You may be seated. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yourselves a round of applause. Coming for you with the mind state of liberation, coming from a long legacy of battle stars and freedom fighters, I acknowledge my duties to Soul Survivors Nation. Elders might have permission to speak. All right, thank you. As we do for those that's here in Baltimore, Tubman City, y'all know what we do. We say how the Africans feel, and as loud as you can, you say the spirit is strong, definitely strong. All right. So we got a lot of people in Baltimore, Tubman City here today. Where you at? Baltimore, Tubman City. Raise your hand in the air. All right. All right. Who else we got in the building? Philly in the building. Give him a big round of applause. Here in Tubman City. Philly in the building. Who else in the building? That's it? Baltimore and Philly? Okay. All right. That's what's up. All right. No, we have a bunch of New York, Brooklyn ain't in the building. Somebody always say Brooklyn. DC in the building. All right. Give it up. You ain't got to be ashamed to say DC. It's all love here, man. Ain't no beef in here. Give him a big round of applause. DC in the building. All right. Anybody else? That's it? See, there it is. I knew it. Is it Brooklyn? Is it Brooklyn? Oh, all right. Okay, all right. New York in the building. Give a big round of applause. New Yorkers in the building. All right, so what we say? Indiana. Well, hold on. What was y'all, shy first or something? Like, nah, I heard about Baltimore. I've been watching The Wire, and I ain't about to say I'm from nowhere. Nah, it ain't even. It's all love up in here. It's all love up in here. All right, give brother a big round of applause. All right, so we say how the Africans feel. You say the spirit is strong, definitely strong. Let's give it a try. How the Africans feel? Spirit strong. Oh, that was all right. Okay, let's try it again. How the Africans feel? Spirit strong. All right, that's what's up. That's what's up. All right, we appreciate y'all for coming out tonight. Give yourselves another round of applause for coming out here. We'd like to thank the pastor, my good buddy, Heber Brown for having us here today. Give the church a big round of applause and the crew that's here. I had to talk the sister into coming in today. She said, Jabari, I'm supposed to be out of town on that day. I said, you sure? Jabari, okay. So we appreciate the sister for having us here. Get, like I said, another round of applause. Because we put this together real fast. Now what we're going to do is we don't have a full performance for you for Watoto from the Nile we like to open up with. But my daughters are with their mom this week. And we have another sick Watoto that's sick right now. And she couldn't be here. So we have Mary that's here. And actually we're happy Mary is back. She just came down from Arizona. She moved to Arizona earlier this year. So that's why you haven't seen her performing with us. But she's one of the original members of Watoto. She's been performing with us all through the years. But just the last few months she hasn't been. But she's back down. We're going to be doing a concert, Unified Die concert with the sisters. And so Mary's going to hold it down for Watoto from the Nile. And she's going to give you a solo, a cappella solo. All right, is that okay? Before we open up for Professor Smalls.
Hi, I'm Mary again, and I'm going to be singing The Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. Everybody searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to. I never found anyone who fulfilled my needs. A lonely place to be. And so I learned to depend on me. I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadows. If I fail, if I succeed, at least I live this I believe. No matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity. Because the greatest love of all is happening to me. I found the greatest love of all inside of me. The greatest love of all is easy to achieve. Learning to love yourself, that is the greatest love of all.
Give it up for Mary. Watoto in the building. Y'all make sure y'all come out to that concert January the 7th. Mary and Watoto from the Nile will be in the building. Come on out, family. It's a family event. We have Richard Raw's going to be in the building, going to be performing. We have Paradise Shift that's going to be in the building. Sister Mayada's going to be there, doing a presentation about her book that she has. It's a family event. Most of the time you don't have an event that you can go to with your children. This is a family friendly, about love, about the community. Let's support them. Let's show these young ladies what they're doing in the community is appreciated in 2017, because these little knuckleheads, a lot of the little knucklehead rappers are getting a lot of big ups from the community. You know what I mean? Little Mouse from Chicago. I mean, they got millions of hits and they selling. I mean, anytime they go and do a show, they getting like $6,000 to $7,000 per show. And we got to show these young ladies that we support them. Come on out with the family. Unify or die. That's what time it is. You know, I know a lot of people running scared because Trump is in office and all that kind of stuff. Look, we got to unify or die. We got the shirts there. Hopefully there, everybody will have their shirt. You can get your shirts tonight. They're just $20. Get your Unify or Die shirt at that conference, at that concert, and we're going to have a good time. But right now, I just want to say, Dr. Patricia Newton is in the building. Give her a big round of applause. We love Dr. Patricia Newton. I always tell us, for those who don't know, she was doing the lectures some 20-something years ago when I came. I've been doing it for 20 years myself, 21 years. And she was doing them in Baltimore before we came on the scene. So we just come walking on the heels of Dr. Newton. She was bringing everybody to town. She still does events and still does some things, but, you know, I came in, picked up the work on this level here. So we walking in her footsteps. She's a beautiful sister. She spoke for us earlier this year. We did something on Dr. Wells, and we've had some classic DVDs with her, early sexual trauma in the black community. This sister, I think we may have some out there today, early sexual traumas, if you want to check Dr. Patricia Newton out. So we appreciate her, but right now we appreciate to have our elder, Dr. Smalls, in the building. And these two, along with Dr. Khalid and Dr. Barashango and Ashrock Kwesi, these are my teachers. These are my teachers all through the years. So I've watched this whole movement go from the old school people that I dealt with, and I now deal with a lot of the new school people. It's a total different situation. So I'm readjusting myself to dealing with a lot of the younger people because, you know, back then I would call them and, hey, Dr. Smalls, can you come to town? How much money you got? You know, I mean, no, not that he cared about the money so much, because he knew that we was trying to do some things, and they just, at 19 and 20, they loved the fact that I was just doing something. So it was just, you know, once they heard my voice, it was like, okay, look, how much money you got? A couple hundred? Okay, Brother Jabbar, I'll be there. You know what I'm saying? And I'll be down there, whatever. You know how we do, you know. And, you know, you got some of these new school scholars now. Hey, how much you charge? $5,000. That's all I want. Oh, no, this is real. Give me $5,000. Yeah, $5,000. I can't take nothing less than $5,000. $3,000, $5,000. You know what I mean? And this is what they're asking for. You know, not that we shouldn't get paid from these events, because we should. We should be getting paid from these events, you know. So, but we appreciate this brother. He's been an elder in the community. He's walked with the likes of Malcolm X, many great scholars, Dr. Clark, Dr. Yusuf Ben Yakinen, many great scholars, and we love this brother. I heard him on Sarnetta's couch talking about Castro and the things that he's done in Africa, and I said, we got to try to squeeze him in here some kind of way. And that's why this event happened so fast. So we made it happen. Y'all here today. So what I want y'all to do is give a big round of applause for Professor James Smalls. Give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, Brother Jabari. See, the way the money thing go, brothers always call and says, how much you charge? Whenever somebody asks you how much you charge, you know they don't have any money. So you always ask them, how much money you got, or what can you pay me? And nobody goes above 500. They always say like 400. And I was okay. Somebody called me yesterday and said, Brother Small, somebody got your name from this other brother who did this so and so and so. He said, we really need you for Kwanzaa, brother. He said, would you come? I said, come to what? And what am I supposed to do? And he explained. So I says, he said, well, how much you charge? I said, you can't pay me what I charge. But you can pay me. He said, I can pay you $200. So I'm going. And I might give him the $200 back. But it isn't that I got money, because when you fight the system, you don't have money. And I'm not, even though people call me Dr. Small, I don't come out of a system. Patricia Newton can tell you. We are kind of like in the system, out of the system. They've been trying to kill the system for the last 10 years, longer than that. But when you fight the system, it's real. They fight back. You understand? They fight back. You can't get jobs. You can't get bank loans. They do things that hurt your family. They fight back. You're not just playing. These people understand we are fighting them. Information is a weapon. And if you can give the proper information in a way that people can absorb it, it makes it an effective weapon. And the enemy fights back. And so a lot of times you see us out here and people assume because somebody called you doctor that things is cool and you got it all wrapped up, you know, in terms of material. That's not true. You see a brother like Dr. Leonard Jeffries, half the time that old man can't pay his rent. But he'll take that same money he get in his little check and he'll pay a kid's tuition and he don't even know his name. Just met him. They come and said, Dr. Jefferson, I don't know how I'm going to get to school. And he'll go to his bank and get his money. And they go home and tell Sister Rosalind, if we could just hold on to next month, everything will be all right. And I know Sister Roz get tired of it, because Carol get tired of me, But we've been blessed to also have queens that are understanding and in the movement. And if you got a mate that's in the movement and struggling for freedom, you can reach your goals. Our goal is not to make sure we are free. We're making ourselves free to ensure the next generation is free. That's the goal. Because if you fight for you, you lose the battle. You must fight for the next generation. That's the only way you can win this battle. Now tonight I'm supposed to talk about Fidel, and I'm supposed to talk about the Trump card. And I know a lot of y'all was mad with old Trump. Y'all said old Trump is a racist, as though old Hillary wasn't, or isn't. So, you got to understand how the game is played. So I'm going to do Fidel first, tell you how the game was played, and then I'm going to do Trump and Hillary and tell you how the game is played. Because we've been gamed for a long time by the same group of people. The same people who ran the slave trade for Holland, and who ran the slave trade out of the house of Rothschild for Britain, and who owned much of the plantations in Brazil, and who gave us the NAACP in trying to kill Booker T. Washington and squashed Marcus Garvey when he came in this country. The same people who ran our school system and have created this genocide called the Black Youth Mind today. The same people who took all that money from us when we became recording artists and ball players and so forth, and they made their trillions off of us. Those are the same people who made sure you couldn't get jobs, you can't get business, you can't get licenses to open business. And those are the same people you call Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. So we just leave that there for marination purpose. And then we're gonna go and talk about our brother, our comandante, Fidel Castro. Most people did not know Fidel Castro very well, other than what white America and their vitriol had to say about this man. Most people don't know today that the majority of people in Cuba look like you here in this room, and that the Cuban culture is an African culture. And when the Spanish ruled that biggest plantation in the Western Hemisphere in the Caribbean, that's outside of South America. The Portuguese had that. In the Caribbean, the biggest plantation the Spanish had was called Cuba. And most of the people there were Africans. The first largest group of Africans brought as enslaved people to this hemisphere was brought to Brazil. The second largest group of black people brought to this hemisphere, can anybody tell me what nation they were brought to? Don't be afraid. No. Mexico. When we see how our deaf, blind, dumb, mixed race, Native American Africans behave towards us now, because they don't know their history, just like you don't know your history. Most of you, I mean most people here do. The second largest amount of Africans brought to this hemisphere was brought to Mexico. The people who led the revolution that freed Mexico from Spain was all jet black, nappy-headed African men. They even have statues to them in the country. And yet it wasn't until 6 months ago that they legally recognized as a category the African Mexicans. Because the European, the French first, along with the Spanish and the Americans, helped maintain that mental apartheid in Mexico and helped maintain it till this day. If you go into southern Mexico, on the western coast, almost all of those rural towns are majority black people. In fact, somebody put on the internet the other day in one of the big towns there where the young black women started a dance group. You saw that one, right? So that they can use the dance step that their elders and ancestors were doing and trace that back to dance steps in Africa to find out where in Africa they came from. When Malcolm X's nephew was killed in Mexico, for over a year and a half, The African Mexicanos was in the street in front of that bar every single day demonstrating. They had to finally bring the army to move them out. But the news over here never carried a single coverage of that. So we need to understand that study is very important. Malcolm said history is best to reward all research. And he was trying to tell us something. I'm not going to hit your feet. You can keep it right there. So we come back to Fidel and we come back to Cuba. This big black nation. And America decided that they wanted to steal all of the possessions of the Spanish in the Pacific and in the Caribbean, because Spain had gotten a little weak. So what you know as the Spanish-American War was America deciding to rob Spain of all of her holdings in the Pacific, and that's the Philippines and Hawaii and all the other places, and Cuba. But in Cuba, the battle got strange, because the majority of soldiers in the Cuban army at that point who was fighting to free them from Spain was black-skinned Africans. It got so bad, the Spanish were executing them by the tens of thousands, and the world was trying to bring Spain up on charge of genocide, but you never even heard the story. And by the time they got to that aspect of the Spanish-American War where the American committed troops to Cuba under Theodore Roosevelt, those black men had already won the war. Yet they were still in semi-slavery, even though slavery was technically abolished. They were still working them on those sugarcane plantations like slave and tobacco plantations like slave. And so they told all of them, they conscripted every black in the country to fight in that war. And after the black people won the war, they told them, now you got to go back to the plantation. And black folks said, that ain't happening. And so between 1912 and 1950, those whites you see running around Florida and celebrating, their grandparents murdered something like 7 million Africans. But we never heard of it, most of us. The black folks at the time, at the end of the Spanish-American War in Cuba, started the first labor union led by blacks in the Western Hemisphere. And when this man who took over as the prime minister, he said, abolish the union or die. So they set out to kill, as the law of the land, any black that hold membership in the union. And you know what that happened was like the Klan, that got out of hand. They kill any black they saw anywhere they saw them. And again, leaving tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of our people, men, women, and children dead in the streets of Cuba. And one of the full participants in that was Teddy Roosevelt and the American Marine Corps. At that time, Teddy Roosevelt, who got this whole lie about riding up San Juan Hill, he never won San Juan Hill. It was the black troops, the African-American blacks fighting beside the Cuban blacks, that won the Battle of San Juan Hill. And even the American government records show that. And Teddy Roosevelt said, we can't let the newspapers back in the States hear that. So they had this fake ride up the hill with him after the battles, and then send that back to the newspaper of him conquering the Spanish on San Juan Hill in Cuba. And as for Fidel being a communist, Fidel never hid that. But what America don't tell you is that the Communist Party in Cuba goes back to 1921. And that the very Batista, who became this vile dictator, when he got elected to the first office in 1947, he was elected not only on his party platform, but on the Communist Party platform. And yet he was fully backed by America. The Rockefeller family and the American Fruit Company, Exxon, and Gulf. They control most of the sugarcane plantation, most of the tobacco plantation, most of the citrus plantation. An organization like that is called an agri-conglomerate. And the American Fruit Company is the biggest agri-conglomerate in Central and South America. We don't think people make billions off of oranges, but they do, off of sugar cane. Sugar is still one of the biggest commodity in the world. Biggest poison in the world, one of the biggest commodity in the world. So by 1950, when Batista runs again, and some other guy wins, he gets mad and he pulls a coup backed by the American government and the American Fruit Company, the Rockefeller family, Exxon, and Gulf. And that's when he goes into his terror operation. And a young man whose father owned a plantation in an area called Oriente Province, which is one of the blackest provinces in Cuba and one of the largest rural area in Cuba, by the name of Fidel Castro, who grew up with all these black folks, along with some of his partners. They started studying and then protesting with other young students at the time. And they were arrested in 1952, and Fidel Castro was put in prison. By 1953, you got all of the Jewish and Italian mafia moving in, setting up what was then the Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada of that day in Havana, along with all these other white holdings that's there. So, so Mr. Batista, so I'm trying to just do that kind of timeline thing so you can have a sense of what happens by the time they decided that Fidel had organized in the prison so strongly that Batista went to visit the prison one day and the prisoners protested against the president. So they put Fidel in, what do you call that thing? You know, I've never been to prison. So what is it called? Solitary. You've been to prison? Oh, okay. So, solitary confinement. And they kept him in solitary confinement for most of his stay. But they decided to let them out because the people outside was agitating so heavily. They said, we don't think they can do that great harm, so let them out of prison. So they gave them clemency. The biggest mistake they ever made. They gave Fidel Castro and Raul Castro clemency and let them out of prison. So they began to organize in the streets of Cuba for a while, but they were harassed so much, they decided to leave the country and go to Mexico. And in Mexico, they met a young Argentina doctor by the name of Ernesto Che Guevara. And Che Guevara and some of his comrades taught them the art of guerrilla warfare. And guess where Fidel went next? Can anybody raise their hand and tell me where Fidel went next after he left Mexico? Huh? New York City. He came to New York City and Miami, Florida to raise money for his revolution. This is as crazy as could be. He's all over America, all up and down the eastern seaboard, raising money for his revolution. So he goes back to Mexico. So by 53, he decided they got enough money to buy a little beat-up boat. And about 125 of them are going back to liberate Cuba. But they had 200 people on the ground, and so they were supposed to take 5 days to get from Mexico to Cuba. But the boat was old and leaky. They had to be bailing water almost half the way there. So instead of 5 days, they got there in 7 days. But there was no way to communicate to the people on the ground, so they launched their attacks from Oriente. And in this attack, most of them got killed, and the rest was put in prison. So when Fidel got there, they had 25 men left. And they went to the mountains. And then they took one major army barracks and arsenal. And the man who had helped destroy those young men, he executed them publicly. And the people then realized he meant business. And within a month, he had an army of 300 people. And it went up from there. And they fought their war. And they destroyed the Batista dictatorship that was backed up by Dwight David Eisenhower by that time. And would be backed up by John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So y'all need to take that Kennedy down off your wall. Because Dwight David Eisenhower set up the murder of Patrice Lumumba. But it was his predecessor, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who carried out the murder of Patrice Lumumba. And when they carried out the murder of Patrice Lumumba, guess who went to Africa? It is then that Fidel dispatched Che Guevara and 1,500 of his best guerrilla troops to go to the Congo and fight on the side of Patrice Lumumba's forces. And some of you are too young to remember when America bombed the Congo, but I remembered, and some of us in here remembered. And they told us they were bombing the Congo because there were 10 Catholic nuns being held hostage. Now you got 10 people being held hostage. You got the best army in the world, but they bombing and killing all these innocent black people. This is your friend John Fitzgerald Kennedy, by the way. So The Cubans had to retreat and go back to Cuba to get their revolution off the ground. Because by now, America comes to punish Cuba with invasion. The one you know about is the Bay of Pigs. But the American invasions into Cuba lasted for 2.5 years. They went into Cuba in the mountains, bombing airfields, bombing stores, bombing supermarkets, anything that they thought could destroy that government, but they don't talk about that. Fidel first came to America and asked America to help them build a democracy based on social justice. Well, America couldn't do that because America didn't give us social justice. So America refused. America wanted him to turn the land back over to the Rockefellers, the fruit company, and the gangsters. And that's when Fidel went to Cuba. Because at that point, America decided to boycott economically, and they had to survive. In the ensuing years, Cuba buried more than 10,000 of her sons and daughters from their army in the soils of Africa, where they fought with Amilcar Cabral against the Portuguese in Guinea-Bissau and the Revolutionary Front called PAIGC. And every force that Fidel sent to Africa, he sent a black general to lead them. He made sure of that. All in all, Cuba committed 55,000 Cuban troops to the wars in Africa. 100,000 doctors and 150,000 nurses. Where was America with all of its democracy while we were suffering under Portugal colonialism? And yet this little country that could barely feed itself because this big bad wolf was boycotting it could do that for Africa. And because they did that, because in 1975 he took on UNITA, which was the black force that America and the CIA was running against MPLA, the Liberation Force in Portugal, and the South African Army, who was trying to destroy the Liberation Force in Angola, Angola. Cuba sent this army in, and guess what it did? It crushed the CIA, it crushed UNITA, and it crushed and broke the back of the South African Army. It crushed it in such a convincing way, they had to let Nelson Mandela out of prison and give the black folks political control in South Africa because they thought the armies of Cuba would be at their door next. That's why Nelson got out, not because white folks got the Holy Ghost over there. Okay. And so until 1999, his army was still on the ground in Africa. They helped to free Namibia. They fought with SWAPO. That's the Namibia Liberation Front. They helped to free Angola. They helped to free Guinea-Bissau. They helped to free South Africa. And today, if you go to Ghana, there's more Cuban doctors in Ghana than there's Ghanaian doctors in Ghana. And that's true for most African countries. Because we get our degree and we leave and go to Britain and America. And we're not taking care of our business because of our consciousness. Cuba, Fidel, I remember once Barbara Walters interviewed Fidel. And Walters asked him, why are you sending the sons of Cuba to Africa to die? He said, I'm not sending the sons of Cuba. I'm sending the sons of Africa to go home and free their brothers and sisters. Fidel Castro, as white as he was, as light as he was, always owned the African blood that ran in his veins. He practiced Lukame. How many people know what Lukame is? It is our traditional religion. Some people call it Santeria, some call it Voodoo, some call it Obia. In Cuba it's called Lukame. Lukame is a word from the Yoruba people that really means you're my kind. It wasn't a religion at home. At home we didn't have no name for our spiritual system. It's only after we leave home we got to do something to be oneness. And so when we were on the slave ship and we were from that area which we now call Yoruba land and Nigeria, we would say, I know you, like you, Lukame, you're my kind. You're from my family, you're my bloodline, you're my tribe people. And that system of African spirituality is still the most powerful force in that island, and that's why it's been able to survive. Not communism, because they had never set up a communist state in Cuba. It is a socialist state with a mixed economy. You were even allowed to make a profit up to a ceiling, and at that ceiling you had to turn that money over to the state for social services. So we've just been lied to. Right now there's over 100,000 African students studying in Cuba. Right now there's over 50 to 60 African American training to be doctors in Cuba, free, right now. During the revolution period, when those people were poor, they got a place called the Isle of Palms, and there's a second island. Every African nation that was still under colonialism, he took their children and he trained them in the science and technology and medicine to go back home in Cuba. So they want to tell us about some dictator who murdered his people and all that foolishness, while they go around the world murdering us every day. The United States of America is responsible for the death of millions of Congolese just in the last 20 years. And we don't even see their stories in the newspapers. That's why history is very important. And that's why Africans, no matter how light-skinned you are, or how dark-skinned you are, or how long you've been in the Americas, or how recent you got here, you're the same people. And the only way you're going to get that and understand that is study your history.
Yes, sir. Right.
You know? So, for Comandante, he deserves our praise. And yet God, this God of African consciousness is so bad that they tried to kill the poor man 600 times that we know of. And guess what? The most mightiest nation on the planet Earth couldn't do it. Why? I happen to think it's Lukome. I happen to think it's our juju. They want to make juju sound negative or voodoo sound negative, but make juju and voodoo sound positive. I love my juju. I don't leave home without it. It's nothing but your mind in touch with your ancestral mind. Because just think of it now. If in the beginning nothing exists but that which caused existence to exist, then anything else that exists is an extension of an aspect of that. Isn't that true? There's no other truth. You couldn't break that with no kind of science or logic. That you're God having a human experience. And that's the way our culture speaks to it. Find an African language that don't have within their language system, in their definition of people, person, place, or thing, the name of God either as suffix or prefix. Find one. Because in our language, we always spoke to the fact that we are God having a human experience. In many of our languages, we refer to God as the totality of creation itself. And human beings is nothing but an expression of an aspect of divine essence having their peculiar experience, just like the tree and the water and the wind, etc. You know, that white man, the doctor, used to say it's all elementary. It is elementary. But it's about you having a partnership with the rest of nature to be in harmony and not to be in opposition. And we've run into something in nature, a mutation. And the mutation managed to fool us because it walks upright. Kind of look like a duck, kind of sound like a duck, it kind of wobble like a duck, and we got confused and thought it was a duck. And look at us now. Nature has all kinds of mutation. It's a part of the process. But you're afraid to call the mutation a mutant, even given all that it has done. All that it has done. Here we sit in this land, which is our land too. Let me be frank, and don't the Morris brothers don't get it twisted. That's what the young people, don't get it twisted, what I'm going to say now. Before the Asiatic Native American got here, we were here. But we don't know that history. Brother Imhotep what's this young brother named Imhotep, not Michael Lee, the writer, had written some good work on it. Van Sertima has done some good work on it. And there's a Jewish writer that did some good work on the presence of Africa in this hemisphere before the Asiatic Native American came. Matter of fact, the facts support it everywhere you go. I'm one of them, standing right here in front of you. But you didn't know that about me. See, when we were young, if you say you were Native American, they say you didn't want to be African. So you don't say that I'm Chicora. I'm from the Chicora Nation. And the Chicora Nation was all black. We were so black that by 1975, it took them that long to even claim us as a Native American tribe. But I'm also African. My grannies came from East Africa on my mother's side, and from West Africa on my mother's father's side. Both of my paternal great-grandmother were Chicoras, Native American peoples. Not straight hair Asiatic types. The type that Christopher Columbus wrote about in his diary. He met them, and he says he met these Ethiopians. His brother wrote about it in his diary. These Ethiopians they met. The one Verrazano who came into New York, when he came into New York Harbor, he found all these black folks and referred to these Ethiopians. But they blocked that from our history book. But they didn't call themselves Moors, brothers. Okay, they had other names for themselves. Most of the names that we called ourselves in Africa and anywhere else we were simply humans. It meant living beings. We didn't have the kind of labeling we do today. We didn't even label landmass in the way we do this continent, this country, these borders. There were no borders. I just want to get that kind of in your head, because we're going to come to Mr. Trump and the Trump card. But I wanted to talk about Fidel a little bit, because the man deserved the respect he wasn't given even by the people he helped to free. Most blacks in the United States, many blacks in Africa know what Fidel have done, and they respect and praise him. But we in the United States, we don't know what Fidel did for Africa. Not only for Africa, every single progressive government in Central and South America, Cuba alone, is money, is doctors, is army to help them to freedom. And every single government in the Caribbean and in Central South America that wanted to build a democracy was met by America's tyranny and the imposition of dictators throughout the area for as long as we've known. And most of the dictators and military leaders killing people all over Central and South America were trained in Langley, Virginia in the College of the Americas, which is one of those CIA training camps for people they sent. You remember the people in Arab Spring? You remember all those young Arab men and women they were interviewing? Did you meet one that spoke bad English? Not one. And I'm sitting there saying, is it only me that's seeing this? That everybody they choose to stick their mic in front of spoke English better than me? Nobody got it. We saw a bank robbery, but thank you, brother, open it for me, if you don't mind. We saw Hillary Clinton and her Zionist cohorts murder off a whole family, destroy one of the most beautiful nations in Africa in order to rob them of nearly $300 billion. It was one of the biggest bank robberies in history. Y'all didn't know they took all the money that he had in the Swiss banks abroad? Y'all didn't know they took all the money that he had in the country? Huh? It was a robbery. Because the Zionist figure, if Bush and Cheney could go and rob Iraq and call it a war, we can rob Libya and call it a war. But they run the media, so the media tells you the story they want. They made one mistake in Libya. A young white man, beautiful man, CIA agent, I think his name was Stevens, what's his name? The ambassador that got killed, Stevens, right? He was a CIA agent that helped organize that resistance. He thought it was real. And when he found that it wasn't, they tried to bribe him by making him an ambassador. How do you move somebody from the field, a field operative, into the ambassadorship in a month? Don't happen that way. And when he decided that he wasn't going to let this go, He wanted to tell the truth. Hillary and them killed them. Yeah, I said it. Everybody else scared to say it. My mother didn't birth no punk. Excuse me, I know I'm in the church now. I'm supposed to forgive me, Lord. I know what I just did. But y'all know, if you don't understand what's going on around you on a daily basis, if you're still listening to medias, that's what those things are called, that they run, that won't tell the truth about anything, at least go to CCTV. The Chinese only lie 49% of the time. Or go to, what's that other one, the Japanese, the Sino TV channel, and you might get 50% lies when it comes to Africa. And then there's another one, the Korean. At least you get a little more truth. And hopefully our African nations and the African Union will come together and we'll put our own network up. We certainly got the money, we certainly got the numbers, we certainly got the skilled people. But we need the desire on the part of our leaders. But they went in and murdered the whole nation and robbed it and got away with it. Of hundreds of billions of dollars. Tell me how many people remember the tractor-trailer trucks in Iraq full of money. Raise your hand. What happened to those tractor-trailer trucks full of money? Nobody knows, except Bush and Cheney, and Rumsfeld, and Pearl, and Wolfowitz. You notice that right after they stole the money, Wolfowitz resigned, Pearl resigned, Cheney stepped down at the end of the election. Bush says, I'm done with the presidency. He ain't had no more to say to nobody. They robbed the place. While they got you chasing some poor brother. And so you don't understand, Saddam Hussein had just got through fighting a war on behalf of America as the American surrogate for over 5 years against Iran that cost the life of 1.5 million people. And so they told him, you can have your country back. See, Kuwait was never recognized as a nation until after the first Gulf War. Kuwait was a part of Iraq, which was stolen by the British back in the day when they discovered pearl off of the coast before they even discovered the oil. So America told, my man, you fight for us, you can get your stuff back. So he moved on it. And they said, that's provocation for war. And they took him out. But if you don't watch the bouncing ball and listen to history, you'll fall for the okie doke. You know the one that said we were inferior? The one that got some dumb brains referring to our brothers from Hong Kong as being monkeys? You know those things that put that stuff in your mind or in your children's minds or your friend's mind? You're still listening to the same machine that give you those thoughts. We spend enough money on junk every year. We can take 2 to 3 trips to Africa and not miss the money we spend on junk. But we'd rather spend the money on junk instead of going home. We say we want to go home. Well, there's nothing but a plane ride away, you know. And the good news is Ghana finally, thank God, has decided to grant dual citizenship to diasporans. The first ceremony will be next week at the Du Bois Center. And we hope that that happens with more nations. I'm not going to get dual citizenship. Let me tell you why. Because I'm not sure the government, see, when you're dual citizen and something happens, you got to be under the jurisdiction of the government whether something happened at. Well, I'm not sure I want to be in Ghana in jail. They don't even have no cops up in there. That's a kind of rough jail. But that's a joke. Let's get our dual citizenship. Let's reattach ourselves to that continent. Let's take our continent back. Because they're now in the process, and Trump's going to accelerate what Hillary and them is doing in taking control of Africa. This is the new age of imperialism. And if you don't understand what imperialism is, study some history. Get a contemporary work just by Brother Robin Walker, When We Ruled, and just read this young man's looking at it. So you don't have to go too deep. He gives a very good survey. But there's any number of books. Just go to the library and look at imperialism in Africa, you know, and look at the amount of literature. That means somebody is in your land, controlling your education system, controlling your natural resources, controlling your government, and willing to kill anybody that stand up against them. Now, a lot of brothers and sisters in this country, many from Cote d'Ivoire, would say Gbagbo was a bad man. So we accept the French and the CIA overthrowing him and put that CIA punk in there, who was in the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund, wherever they got him from, to be the president. I don't think so. The Supreme Court of Ivory Coast said Mr. Gbagbo was their elected president. Who the heck was America, France, and the United Nations to go in there and overthrow him and take control of Cote d'Ivoire and put their little lackey in there? We missed the bouncing ball because we letting the media tell us too much. So I'm getting to Trump. I'm trying to give y'all something. I like Miss Shirley Johnson. She a nice sister. Also come from that World Bank crew. Everybody said, well, Charles Taylor committed genocide. Where? In every war in history, the youth have always fought the dang wars, in this country too. But they had to get rid of Charles Taylor. But you didn't know enough about history to know a man named Francois Massaquoi from the Massaquoi traditional area in Liberia. His father was the paramount chief up there. That's the area where most of the diamonds are in Liberia. Francois was killed a few years before they got Taylor out of there. His helicopter was shot down by somebody's missile. He was the Minister of Youth and Sports in Liberia. But he had led one of the armed resistance initially against Taylor, then he joined up with Taylor. One of the resistance movement was being led by members who were financed by the American Central Intelligence Agency. You think they're gonna let some war go down in Africa and they're not involved? You remember Sierra Leone? Blood diamonds. They took a handsome white boy. I forgot his name because I don't really follow that stuff. And they made a movie, whatever his name. And he dies so the brother can go with the diamond and save himself and his son. Now, they make a South African mercenary whose whole life was about killing black people the hero of the movie. That's what he was in the movie. Got to listen to the dialogue. Blood Diamond was done at a time to play with your mind when they made a decision that no African can sell a diamond unless we approve them selling it. So you can dig all the diamonds you want to dig around. You sell it, and we said you, and we didn't say you had a right to sell it, meaning it didn't come through some white, Jewish, American, British, French company, then you'll have no right to sell your own wealth. That's why they're mad with Mugabe. I don't care if he run for president at 202. I wish I could vote over there. I'd be over there right now voting for Mr. Mugabe. While they talk about Mugabe, who have not hurt his people, Ian Smith, who committed genocide, is still living on his plantation, living the good life, going golfing every weekend. You all remember Ian Smith? Who was over, my brain is dying. They call it, what did they call it back in the day? Thank God I forgot the name. But they ruled that part of Southern Africa, murdering our people like we were fleas. And they were allowed to all walk free. Nobody put them in a court in Geneva. All of the people who committed apartheid. The man who came in court and tells Stephen Biko, mother, I bust your son's brains out, got to go home to his family that night. And some foolishness they call peace and reconciliation. I didn't cry when Bishop Tutu died. I wish I could bring him alive and kill him again. He allowed himself to be used in that way. They committed genocide. No white man in any part of Africa have been brought to trial for the genocide. No money of reparations have been returned to that continent for the carnage over centuries. Hundreds of millions dead. Trillions of dollars of natural resources stolen. And not one person But they set up a court in Geneva. Anybody that defied their rule, they're going to declare him a criminal. They came after Mr. Kenyatta when he was running, and I'm not saying Kenyatta or any of them, guys who don't make mistakes in politics. But who are they? They're going to bring him before a court in Geneva because the person they wanted to run the government in Kenya? Because what they didn't tell you at the time Kenyatta was running in that last election, Kenya had just come up with about a 6th oil well. That Kenya right now is looming to be the biggest oil find in East Africa. They don't tell you that Somalia is all about oil. Understand imperialism, study imperialism. I remember one day I was in Uganda and I'm walking down the street and I saw this beautiful guy walked out the door. He had 2 little beautiful kids on his arm, 2 little girls, and a beautiful sister on the other arm. His name was General Aidid. Anybody remember who General Aidid was? This was the leader in Somalia. They've sold us how he was this great villain. But they don't tell you that the government that was in there before him and many of the other ethnic nations rose up was placed in there by America through assassination, again, so that they could manage the oil. And your friend, Mr. Obama, do you know he passed some literature 3 weeks ago that said America have a right to bomb Somalia whenever it wants to? Did y'all know that? Yes, he did. And they're doing it under a little law that, and somehow they're saying, what's the Bin Laden's crew? What's his, huh? Saying Al-Qaeda is helping the group in Somalia. So since Al-Qaeda was involved in 9/11, under the 9/11 law, they got the right now to bomb and invade and put American troops in Somalia. And he signed that mess. Going out. He could say, I ain't signed nothing, I'm leaving. You'll use me enough. But it didn't come over big in the news. It got a one-day blip in the American news. You got to understand what imperialism really is. It's nothing but armed robbery and genocide. That's all it is. They just have bigger arms. The only day we think of armed robbery with a pistol, but what about armed robbery with a missile and poison gas? Russia is now taking America and Israel and those so-called liberators in Syria to Geneva because it was them who was using the Syrian gas and not the Syrian government. And Russia happened to catch them before they can get their stuff out, and they got the paperwork and the proof and the paper trail. So what did they do to scare Russia? Kill their ambassador, just kill that man, shut him down like a dog. And we think it's just some crazy policeman. We don't even know if that policeman is dead or whether he got disappeared. So where are we? Black folks in America scared to die. They ain't no, but let me give you all a little post. What do they call that? 411. Ain't nobody in this room gonna get out of this world alive. Y'all get that? And ain't nobody in this room know when that exit period's gonna come. But everybody got an exit strategy, whether you know it or not. It's already been designed for you. So why not live? In my early teachings, I had this brother, and I was telling Jabari about him today, Uncle Lucius, and he used to teach us metaphysics, and one of the things he told us is life is forever living, and death is forever dying. So forget about death. That's taken care of. That's organized, packaged, and done. You ain't even got to think about that. The only thing you got to think about is living. But they got us thinking about dying if we dare to live. That's because you got the wrong religion. No disrespect, I'm in a church. But you got the wrong religion. You need a religion that teaches you about life. You need a religion of your mama and your daddy. You need a religion of your ancestors. And yes, we started Christianity. Yeah, we started it, but we didn't call it Christianity. They took it and repackaged it and flipped it through their culture and stepped on it and did some other things on it, then passed it back to us. We don't even know what it looked like anymore. But guess what? Science said that we just go to Lucy. Science said we've been on this planet how many million years? Lucy is a sister skeleton they found in Ethiopia. A few million. You think we were waiting around for these folks to bring us religion? You think we were waiting for somebody to teach us about God? And if we've been around for all those millions of years, don't you think we have perfected an understanding of divinity? The reason you can't unite because you don't know the nexus at which you have relationship. If you don't know the nexus at which you have relationship, you can't unite. You know, I like the term voodoo. You like the term voodoo? Go ahead, Master. She said, I love the term voodoo. It only appears in two languages, the Fon language and the Ewe language. The Fon is the people of Benin, the Ewe is the people of Togo and Eastern, is that Eastern? Eastern Ghana, or the Volta region of Ghana. And where voodoo appears in those languages, it is description of God within nature or the description of God within humans. So if you want to say the essence of God in nature, you say voodoo daha. If you want to say the essence of God in human, you say voodoo gazi. Voodoo is a way to describe the essence of God in things. In short, it is a description of the essence of divinity itself in those languages. And we get the word because much of the people of Haiti came through those portals. And in Haiti, what that system is so beautiful and so complex, yet so effective, but even the people of Haiti have lost how to use their system. That's why they lost the revolution. We keep saying the only revolution that was ever won, we didn't win the revolution in Haiti. We won it and we lost it a few months later when they killed Dessalines. When the mulattoes took over the movement for the Catholic Church interests. But that's not exactly what I'm here to talk to y'all about either. That's just kind of mind preparation stuff. Talk about Mr. Trump. We said once the Trump card has been played, what do we do? And we do what we should have done no matter whose card was played. Build the black community. But you can't build something that don't exist because we don't have any black communities in America. You know, a community is a group of people with a common language, a common history, and in most cases common religious views, live in a common geography, own the geography in which they live, and own the businesses in that geography and the social services, meaning police, fire, et cetera, school system, and we don't, so where we live cannot be called a community anywhere in America. At best, they're neighborhoods and other people's communities. And maybe that's been our failure. We're trying to organize something that don't exist. So we need to stop and back up and figure out how we're going to bring it into existence then. How are we going to create communities? And the first way you create the community, you have to create yourself. You got to become Africans again. And there's no easy way to that. You can't get around that. And Africa is not just a place. It's not just a race. It's not just a culture. It's all of that. But Africa is the essence of your being itself. The very essence of your being. Africa is the notion of the deification of your selfness. If you look in a mirror and you don't see God, you ain't African. Let me say that again, because y'all got, I see the Catholics, the Muslims, everybody's twitching and stuff. You know? If you look in a mirror, I don't care how you look, and what you see in that mirror is not God, you're in trouble. Now, most people who know me knew I grew up in a nice Christian church down in South Carolina, and I was a minister at age 16. And most people who know me better know that at age 21 I was a Muslim not just a Muslim. I was the imam that took over the mosque that Malcolm started after he was shot down. I am Al-Hajj Amin Shaheed, imam of the Muslim Mosque Inc. and 17 other jurisdiction mosques. So I know my religion, and I taught theology at City University for 18 years. And my doctorate is in divinity studies. But I've also been in the movement all my life. I'm a gunslinger, and I own a bunch of guns. I ain't giving nobody my guns. And I'm not home with Carol right now. You know who took my place in the bed till I get home tonight? That's right. A .357 Magnum. And before I go in my own house, I said, baby, I just pull up in the yard. You know? And when I open that door and take that alarm off, I yell, I'm in the house. And then she'll say, okay, and unlock the door. I'm not safe to go upstairs now. Let me tell you a secret. The only way you can free somebody else is to free yourself. The only way you can free someone else, you must learn to free yourself. Dr. Martin Luther King freed himself. Malcolm X freed himself. Now, they didn't do it by themselves. They had teachers, they had literature, they had experiences, but those experiences led to them freeing their minds. Nelson Mandela was a revolutionary before he went to jail. He freed himself, but the greatest revolutionary in South Africa is Winnie Mandela. You ain't never seen a revolutionary mind till you talk to Miss Mandela. That's why you'll understand why the CIA made Nelson divorce him. Now, I love Nelson, so I'm not going to say nothing bad about Nelson. I'm not going to say the man that came out of prison might not have been Nelson Mandela at all. You don't think white folks got the capability to do that? Fool yourselves. Fool yourselves. I got videotape in my house, because I'm a supporter of the PAC. I was a fully operative member of the PAC, and I'm proud of it. Just like I was a fully operative member of the Black Liberation Army, and I'm proud of it. That's right. And when Asada was on the run after she broke out of jail, yeah, I helped to guard her, and I'm proud of it. What they gonna do? What they gonna do? This isn't the first time I said it. What they gonna do? Dessalines told us it's freedom or death. Anybody that don't live life like it's freedom or death don't deserve life. And the reason our babies are dying because we won't say freedom or death and mean it. Not enough of us. There's some of us who've been saying it. All over Africa, the Caribbean, Central, South America, people dying every day. We got millions of people in Colombia that have been slaughtered on the cross of white supremacy, being led by America, and we don't even know they're down there. That whole thing that they just signed that treaty the other day, most of the people that make up those rebels, they were Africans. That's why they don't want to accept that treaty, because they got to give those people, put where they are in place on the lands that they're on, they're in place. Lands are theirs. They don't have to face any crime, and they shouldn't face any trial. They were revolutionaries fighting for freedom since slavery. The poorest people in Colombia, the millions of poorest people in Colombia look like you in this room. But we haven't understood what just happened in America. You got two major warring groups in America. And I can speak well, because I grew up in the house of the Vanderbilts. And I don't mean Gloria, because she wasn't a Vanderbilt. She was married to the Vanderbilts. I grew up in the house of the Vanderbilts. I could get on my phone right now and call the house of the Vanderbilts and say good evening. They were good people, the ones I grew up with. There's some good Vanderbilts. And what I mean by growing up in the house, you get to see super wealth and who super wealth associate with, and how super wealth operate within the politics of a community. It doesn't change anywhere in the country. So what you just had is a war between the Germans and the Jews. Hillary represented the Zionists and the Jews and their banking interests and their political aspirations, and Trump represented the German, their banking interests and their political aspirations. That's what you just saw play out in America. Now that played out in the election with Obama, but they hadn't seen the black card play before, so they weren't ready for it. They didn't know how to prepare for it. That's why you saw Obama supporting and passing so much literature that had to do with a singular community called the gay community, because his boss, the gay Hillary, didn't you understand that the Jewish guy in New York was having all the problem with his lady, with these young ladies and the pedophilia he was going through? Was married to her boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, the little Arab lady. Well, anyway, leave her alone. Leave them alone. The point is, when you have a minority in numbers, you create groups to make up your numbers. The Zionists are small in numbers, so we make up the Zionist army. The homosexual community make up the Zionist army. The women who are into the women movement make up the Zionist army. Not that many of the elements of the things they're fighting for aren't appropriate things to be fought for, because everybody deserves the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everybody deserves the right to fight for self-determination, but nobody deserves to do it at the cost of my race. And that's what's been happening. It's like the affirmative action thing. The only person that didn't have their action affirmed was us. Everybody else. We got out there, we fought, we bled, we died, we suffered, and then they changed the literature. I was out there, I remember the literature, it used to say Negro. And then they decided to change it. So in the public sphere, they had us run around saying, Black Power, Ungawa, Black Power, we black. While they quietly changed the name on the legal documents to minority. And then they come and classify everybody they could find a minority. And when it was time to split up the booty, won from that fighting, every minority got a piece of it except us. But when it comes time to blame those who got the piece, we get the blame. If you don't believe me, just go to the stats. Look over the last 50 years and see who's on the welfare rolls. And you're going to see you were the minority. You were the only minority. White women were majority. White families were majority. Asians, Latinos, they're on the welfare rolls. They're the majority, but you catching hell as a minority. But we don't do that kind of research. They tell you, you don't vote. That's why we treat you like this. Well, if we don't vote, how did we get all these thousands of black elected officials from 1954 to now? You know how many black folks we've elected to office? Thousands and thousands of Negroes who feel they're not beholden to us, because the people who run the Democratic Party that they're part of tell them you're beholden to me. And that's Hillary and the Zionist machine. If you study the voting trend in America, the black voting trend on any graph does not do a downward turn in the last 40 years. And they tell you, you don't vote. Do the graph, and it will shock you. And we found out the other day who really didn't vote in America. Except Trump, and those researchers knew who it was. And they picked a man that could appeal to that population. The working poor and the working white underclass didn't vote, because they didn't feel they had to, because they were being serviced whether they voted or not. But in order to get their team in power, they needed them to vote. And so they came up with a strategy, and you got to give them credit, it worked. It was beautiful what they did. That was the best political stuff I've seen. And they picked someone, and we saying how dumb Trump is. Don't fool yourself. That man didn't become a billionaire because he's dumb. Don't fool yourself. Remember how we used to say Bush stumbled and he's a stumbling bomb? Well, he walked away from Iraq with a couple of $1 billion, the stumbling bomb. He gave all his friends all they need, the stumbling bomb. He got all the legislation passed that he needed to affect the interests of the group that put him in there. So what do we do with Trump? Nothing. We've had 43 white racist men as president of the United States. He's going to be what, the 44th? What's different between him and George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, that rapist and pedophile, not Hamilton, they killed him. That was the poor little mixed breed brother. And he wanted to give them a bank, see. They killed Hamilton for the same reason they killed Lincoln and the same reason they killed Kennedy. But you thought they killed Lincoln because he tried to free you from slavery. They killed Lincoln. Lincoln was the first president of the United States to do what? He printed money. Until the Civil War, every state printed their own money. Lincoln printed the national currency that everybody had to use. And they call it the what? The buck or the something? The greenback. Lincoln wanted to do what Alexander Hamilton wanted to do. Y'all listen to me well, because it's coming. This is the same people in office right now who killed Lincoln. Lincoln wanted to create a state bank, like the Bank of England, rather than a bank owned by the private sector, like the Federal Reserve. You don't understand the implication then until you really think about it. The Federal Reserve is not a government entity, yet it determines how our money gets printed, what interest go on our money. These are a bunch of crooks, international bandits who got most of their wealth from slavery and robbing Africa in the period of imperialism. So John Kennedy, do you know that John Kennedy, just before he died, printed the first money since Abraham Lincoln from the U.S. Treasury and not from the Federal Reserve? And they took him up out of there in a hurry. You know? It's deep, man, when you watch this stuff. It's deep. Dr. King, the night before he died, he made a speech. And everybody can repeat the last line. I've been to the mountaintop. I've looked over and my eyes have seen, what? The valley or whatever Doc saw. But Doc, you know I love you. He said he's seen the glory of the coming of the Lord and he fed no man. He said he wasn't going to get to the promised land with us, but he was sure we would get there. And that was the last two lines. Now if you heard the two paragraphs before that, what did he say? Don't be scared, sister. What did he say? No, that's the building where he said, boycott Coca-Cola. Boycott Wonder Bread. Take your money out of the American banks and put it in black credit unions and black banks. That's what the speech was about. But they never play that, do they? They never play that. Go get the speech for yourself. You think that little thing down in Washington, I Have a Dream, was a great speech? That wasn't no great speech. Matter of fact, that I Have a Dream part wasn't even in the written speech. That was an ad-lib piece he did because Mahalia Jackson heard him do that piece in church and said, Martin, do that piece that you said about this I Have a Dream. And he kicked that in after he finished his written speech. So you won't find that in Martin's written speech. But yet they run that to you as though that was a speech. The written speech was about reparations. But he did it in his word. He was talking about the check that came back insufficient funds when he was talking about civil rights. And that speech that night, he knew they were going to kill him, and he knew who was going to kill him. And Jesse isn't vindicated from that, being a participant in that either. I ain't scared to say it. Jesse come in my face, I'll put the brother on the floor. He know what the truth is. And you remember that reporter we thought was the greatest black reporter in America because he was getting all this stuff up in the museums and stuff. Turned out to be an undercover FBI man who they had borrowed from the Memphis police force. They made it look like he got in trouble on the Memphis police and they kicked him out. And so he ran to Dr. King and was Dr. King photographer for the rest of Doc's life. And in the end, he's an FBI informant. Remember Malcolm laying dead on that floor? And the brother leaning over him, Gene. Of course, I don't blame Gene. He was a 19-year-old kid, just out of the academy. Gene Roberts was one of Malcolm's bodyguard, but he was NYPD from the boss squad. But when you were busy watching Gene, who they talk about, they didn't show you Richard Jones, the cat in the pinstripe three-piece suit, who was the federal agent standing on the same stage over Malcolm's body. But let's come back to Mr. Trump. I'm just trying to make you think past what people have told you. The only way you're going to defeat Mr. Trump is you're going to have to tell the Arab storekeepers in your community, I love you, my brother, but my God did not send you here for me to take care of you. And you got to tell the Chinese laundry people who own all the laundromats, I don't know how that happened, that's crazy, that one group of people could within 2 decades control all the laundromat in the black community from the Pacific to the Atlantic. And you telling me our government is not involved? And you have to tell them I can wash my own clothes. And you who used to do your nails all your life, now if a Korean ain't doing your nails without washing their hands, you don't get your nails done. And you go get your shrimp fried rice. Your shrimp fried rice. From people who wouldn't urinate on you if you were on fire. You ask the African brothers and sisters who live in China how friendly they are. You know. But I wouldn't care what they thought of me. If the Chinese people who own all those businesses in our community would be willing to live in my community, invest in my community, hire the people from my community, and help build facilities in that community, that'd be my brother and my sister, and I'd be willing to die for them. But that's not what they're doing. If the Arab brothers who told me salam alaikum and sell me pork and beer, you know what I'm talking about, good Muslim brothers and sisters, you know, salam alaikum, what sliced chop you want today? If he was willing to live in my community and invest in my community and help defend that community when our people fall from these gunshots, we never see any of the merchants marching with us except a few black ones. So, I didn't say nothing to the Lord. I hope he didn't turn off the air conditioning because he thought I was right. Let me tell you what you do. Trump played his card. Your card needs to start with the organization you're in. Everybody in here belongs to something, even if it's a church. A church is an organization first. It's incorporated and it's chartered under the state in which it exists. It's an organization. It's an organization that's there to teach you how to live ethically, morally, and spiritually. It's an organization that's supposed to teach you about God and how to be. And then you got the sororities and the fraternities. I'm a Prince Hall Mason. I'm not ashamed of it because Prince Hall Masonry is one of the best black organizations ever raised up in this country, except nobody gives the credit for what it does. Most of the great leaders in this country and in a big part of Africa came from this lodge, except we can't claim that we do this if we're from the lodge. But that's all right, because I'm also the grand priest of the grand craft of the Grand East. That's why you saw me burying Dr. Ben, because nobody else could do that but me. So I say that to say this, the priest is nothing but an educator. A priest isn't something that's going to float up into heaven. But I didn't go into the craft through Dr. Ben, though Dr. Ben and I was I came into the craft through Chad, to Tumpum Bye-Bye, who was murdered by the French and the American intelligence for the same reason, the oil in the grounds of Chad. This is back in the early 70s. Just so you can know a little bit of stuff about me, because most people don't really know me. They know there's this guy named Professor Small, and they think that I taught at this college, and that's who I am. That's not who I am. But let me tell you what we got to do. You want to be black? You want to save your grandchildren so that they don't get shot down in the street like the 2 kids down in Arkansas by some crazy? So that you don't raise up crazies that's going to shoot some baby down in the backseat of their grandmother's car because grandma going too slow. Then you got to take control of your mind so you can take control of your behind. And the way to try to take control of your mind is at the same time take control of your behind. And that means you have to start building businesses in your community that you run. And you can't do that if you keep giving your money to other people who decide they're going to come in your community and build businesses that you run for them. There's no other way out of this. It's economic, politics, and culture. We got the politics down. We got all the people in the political office. We got the culture down too, to a great degree. We miss a big part of the culture because we don't know that at the core of your culture is your spiritual system. So we dance, we sing, we do all these things. That's not culture. Those are tools of culture. Culture is the philosophical and the ideological reality by which you live. You want to truly understand who you are? Everything you think about God is what you should be. But that scares people. They don't think they could be all those things. So let's start with the little thing then. We got all this unemployment in our community, yet we spent $1 trillion last year. Does that make sense? If that $1 trillion was organized, there would be no unemployment in the black community, and we'd have money left over to invest in critical areas of Africa so they don't have to turn to China and Europe and America for investments. But because that wealth is not organized, we can't turn it into riches. And so I suggest we start where we are. Start with your own mind and with your family. And I used to be very ruthless. I used to tell people to leave the church, leave the mosque, and I didn't say it in those nice ways. Yes, sir. How you doing, brother? Huh? I'm good. How you doing? You came to the meeting late today. What's up? All right. You all right? Give me that snap. All right. If we were in each of our communities where we're from, decide to enter a process called mapping. Mapping your community. See, you got to find a way to organize yourself. I happen to think mapping is a good way to begin to organize. Here's what I mean by mapping. Either do it with your family and the other families you're close to, or with the organization that you're part of. Get a video camera, get a still camera, get some clipboards and some pads. Start at one end of the community that you live in, and block by block, record every store that's in that block. The purpose of the store, the ownership of the store. And by the block address, you can go to the lands office and find the block and lot and see who owns it. That's called mapping, so you know who owns your community and who owns the business in the community. The other thing you do, you begin to create a grade sheet so you can grade the quality of the business. Is it clean? Is it a healthy thing? Are they serving garbage that shouldn't be there anyway? Or are they serving food that is appropriate for human consumption? That's called mapping. Begin to map your community. And when you finish mapping, begin to target what you need to remove from your community. You don't have to wear no beret. You don't have to carry no gun. You don't have to call nobody no bad names. Just simply take that responsibility to define your reality. Dr. Noble said power is the ability to define reality and have other people accept your definition of your reality as if it were their own. So begin to map. That's a good way to organize your group. Divide your community up into what I call grids of 10 blocks each. You know, you can be as arbitrary as you need to be. And over each of the 10 block grid, put a block or a grid commander. And in each of the 10 blocks, put a block captain. And in each of the buildings on that block, get a co-captain, even if it's a private house. Those co-captains all report to the captain, the block captain. The building co-captains report to the block captain, and the block captain report to the grid commander. That doesn't take that many people. And you can determine what schools are in your community, how many firehouses in your community, how many black people working in those firehouses, where are the police precincts in your community, how many black officers are working in those precincts, where are the stores that serving good healthy foods, and who own these facilities. That's called mapping your community. And that'll help you organize. Just having that experience, gathering that data will help you organize, help you learn to know each other, and to come together around the common understanding of what freedom really means. The word freedom means liberated mind. It's from two Greek words. Free means to liberate, and dome means mind. It don't mean taking over this building. You got to free your mind. That work of mapping and organizing your community, you don't need no name. You don't need to be the Pan-African this and the Zoo this. Don't call it nothing. Just communities working together. You don't need no special name. It ain't gonna do nothing but send your enemy after you anyway. And you don't have the ability to protect yourself against that enemy. Now, do y'all think that makes sense? Let me tell you something. If you're gonna wait for somebody to come and do you some favor called freedom, you're gonna be right where you are, and your grandchildren are gonna be right here, and your great-grandchildren are gonna be right here in the same space, same place, asking the same questions. You will not go to Chinatown and find a bunch of black folks owning anything. You won't find a bunch of white folks owning nothing, and you're not gonna find a bunch of Arab folks owning nothing in Chinatown. And you go down to where the Jewish people live, and you will find nobody owning nothing down there but them. But you feel bad to own something in the geography you live on, because it ain't your community yet. It becomes your community once you get ownership of it. You make the money. You spent $1 trillion last year. It is predicted that you will spend $1.3 trillion this year. That's more than enough money to solve all of our problems. And that's the money we count. That ain't the illegal under the table stuff and that other stuff we do. But we have to really believe that we deserve to be free. And you know why you can't believe you deserve to be free? Because you haven't been able to put a value on yourself as a human being. And you can't put a value on yourself as a human being unless you can value the ancestors that produce you as a human being. And you can't value that ancestor if you don't know their history and their experiences on this earth. We are Africans, period. You may have to label yourself based on where you're at. When you say African American, that's not a contradiction. Africa is our race, our cultural space, and America is our geopolitical space. It's not a contradiction. But you just got to know what you're doing. But Africa is definitely straight up our race. And even this confusion we get in and say, oh, look at his brother, he light skinned, he got some white people in his family. Maybe, but white people are Africans too. They're just sick Africans. No, you gotta deal with the truth. There ain't but one group in the world, one race in the world. It's the human beings, and what they call themselves generically is Africans. All right? And we need to, if we're gonna be leaders, we gotta lead with the truth and not be afraid of the truth. Because you're not gonna win against them being foul, because they are foul. You're not going to win against them. You will never win playing the game somebody else invented, because the game is them. You have to understand that you have to value you. And you can't value you if you can't find God in you. How can you value yourself? In all of the African cultural space I visited with my mind and listened to elders, all of it described the divinity in them, the accessing of the divinity in you. Even the very word education means to bring something inside out, not to put something outside in. In Western society, we are taught that education is something that somebody outside of you give to you. That's not education. Education is something that's inside of you that the teacher teaches you to bring out. That's why the Africans invented the 7 liberal arts. The 7 liberal arts are the best tools we could come up with for us to bring the essence of us inside of us outside of us. But you don't know that Africans invented the 7 liberal arts, because white folks ain't never told you that. But if you study our history, start reading a book like Stolen Legacy by G.M. James. But don't just read it. A lot of y'all go, Y'all didn't even understand what James is saying. Otherwise, you'd be too busy to even be here listening to me tonight. No disrespect. I'm just trying to be hard because it's too important. At 71, I can't count a whole bunch more years. I'm going to be out of here. Y'all are nice. I don't want to go. But you don't have any choice. But I know something y'all don't know. I know I can't go anywhere. So I could be a bad dude because I know I can't go anywhere. And I know that I'm already here in other forms and other ways. I got 8 children. I got 22 grandchildren. Every one of them is an aspect of me continuing my beingness. And we account for that in our spiritual tradition. In the Yoruba, we say in Awo, we said we go and we come. We say we're born into this earth with a mission. Every human being that comes, that we have a destiny that we agree to with divinity and ancestry before we come here. And then we got 8 times to come and go to perfect ourselves, and 12 steps in each of the 8 comings and going. We got a whole theology y'all don't know about that describe our humanity. And we need to start studying more and learning. Another good book is the brother John Mbiti. John Mbiti, M-B-I-T-I. And he wrote a book on African religion and philosophy, and another one on African, the introduction to African religion. I think Mbiti is from Kenya, but it's an extraordinary piece of work. We have not examined it enough. It is not outdated. It is right on time. The other book you need to read is Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. If you read it before, read it again, because you didn't understand what Carter G. was saying. And the latest book that's out, which may be too much for most of you, is called The Island of Meme. The Island of M-E-M-E. It's written by Dr. Wade Nobles. And anybody know Dr. Nobles? He walks on water 7 days a week. And The Island of Meme, the subtitle is Haiti, the Unfinished Revolution. But what he's getting at in The Island of Meme, he's talking about a meme as the thought construction of the information, if I'm getting it right, Pat. He's talking about the source of the information that organizes your mind, and the construction of the thought that created that body of information that organized your mind. And since the construction of the thought that created the information off of your mind is fundamentally European, he says you are infected with European mimetic ideology. That all of us are suffering from an infection of European information that has determined not only the ideas we have, but the way in which we see the ideas that we have, and the way in which we express the ideas that we see, that we have. And unless you cleanse your mind of this European mimetic infection, it doesn't matter how black you externally present yourself to be, you're still a danger to African development and African freedom. So you need to get that book, The Island of Meme, by Dr. Wade Nobles. So back to Mr. Trump. It's about economics, it's about politics, it's about culture. Now, economics is the mining of the wealth in your ecology. You know, economics is not banking, it's not bookkeeping, and it's not accounting, it's not money. Those are all tools of economics. Economics is exploiting the wealth. It's the wealth that's in your ecology. If you live in urban America, the economics in your culture primarily is retail sales to your own people. The economics in your ecology is the return to your community of the earmarked monies that was taken away from that community as tax revenues. And if you don't learn to mine those 2 main sources of resources in your community, you'll never get control of your community. Never. You understand that? Politics is how you manage your economics and how you protect it from other people's intrusion on it. So our politics is in partnership with the people who are exploiting us. We have not developed a politics that protects our economic interests. Our politics is in partnership with the person who's making sure we don't develop an economic interest. You'll understand, I'm simple. I'm not full of complexities, like people say. I'm a very simple dude, because this stuff is very simple. At the end of the day, how many people in here went to college? Boy, a lot of y'all got fooled, huh? Like me. You know, most people who went to college, most people who run this country never went to college. They got people like us working for them. You know, the people we work for, they didn't go to college. I'm not saying there's something wrong with going to college now. I asked that question because most of us think we went to college to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. No, we went to college to make money. Stop lying. You didn't go to college to be no doctor. You didn't know, you didn't go, you went to college to learn how those tools because you wanted to make money. But you won't admit that that's why you went, so you can't make no money because you won't admit that's why you went to college. Why you want to make money? Because money is how, in this ecology, you provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety and security for yourself and your family. And that is the absolute bottom line. Food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. That's what anybody's fighting for. Trump didn't get in there because he just wanted to be a well-known man. He's trying to ensure that his group keep control of what provides food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security in their hands and not in yours. And the reason they have to be so ruthless because the resources that keep them in that position is in our Africa. It's in our land. And they got to steal it. So they got to keep us blind. So they make one blood, make one Crip. Take you to school. They don't teach you to read. They don't teach you to write. They don't even teach you to think. And we've gotten so crazy in believing in our enemy, loving our children. We're the only people in the world that give our murderers and our thieves and our genocide our children to race. No other group on the planet Earth does that silliness. All those schools you call public schools, they are yours, but you don't act like they're yours. You're not in there running it. Don't even go to the PTA meeting. You don't go in there and demand that either the curricula reflect me or there'll be no school up in here tomorrow. Some of us still do it. We fighting up in New Rochelle every day. They tried to do the bathroom change on us. We had a war. Back that one up. So then they came through a back door. They said, what we gonna do, y'all got white robes for the women and blue robes for the men. Well, we want just a single black robe for everybody. So that ain't happening. So we had to fight on that. I belong to a group in New Rochelle, we call it a gathering of men. And what we do is find work for young black men and young Latino men. Because don't be fooled by that Latino thing, there's no such thing. They're just black folks that are lighter skinned than some of us who are Anglo. When we speak English, we are Anglos, and they are Hispanic. Then you got some Francophone, but none of that is us. We just some black folks being processed by somebody else's thing. So we had to go before the city council a few months ago because they got a revitalization program in the city. They're going to rebuild the entire downtown of New Rochelle. We said, that's fine, but there ain't going to be no work in this town unless you pass an ordinance guaranteeing black men would have access to job. They say that's racism in reverse. Fine. I don't care what reverse is it. Y'all ain't going to have any construction work going on that we're not going to stop unless you make, and they passed the ordinance. Then we went home and we realized after we had our next meeting, you know what? We didn't put no checks and balance on how we can check on the fact that they're doing that. So we went back and had some meeting with our little city council who was coward as scared as can be. And we said, now you go back to the council and we want an addendum to the ordinance saying that every 2 months we can go over the books and see how many of our people have been hired and what they're being paid. And we got it passed. And you know what? We go to PTA meetings too. We go and drove, 20, 30 black men. You ought to see how scared people are. We don't really have nothing to say. We just go up in the PTA meeting, we just sit down. And it's very effective. Because this, at the end of the day, is about food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for yourself and your family. We could throw all the fancy words, throw Pan-Africanism out the window, throw black nationalism out the window, throw revolution out the window. This is simply about taking care of ourselves and our families. Now, how do we do that? Chinese ain't rallying. Koreans ain't rallying. The Arabs ain't rallying. The Jews, nobody having these rallies but us. We have these big old rallies, these big old marches, and nothing changed. I think, Dr. Newton, y'all say if somebody keeps doing the same thing over and over and keep getting the same result, what is that person? So we need to listen to that. What's my time, Giovanni? 10 minutes. Okay. Y'all not going to get any questions and answers either, because I got to train the kids. But I'm going to give you a few. We're going to give a couple of questions. That's important. Let me just try to wrap it up in one small package, because any good lecture should take about 10 minutes. The rest of the stuff is just entertainment. Y'all know that. Because everybody in here know what we should be doing. We should be making sure our family has food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. You can't do that by yourself. Going and getting yourself a degree, getting yourself a good job with one of the big corporate structure, then go buy a nice house out in the white neighborhood. You don't control nothing. You ain't in charge of nothing. They don't even speak to you. You come out in the morning and say, good morning, almost like it's a drill. They look at you and ask, what's wrong with that? Oh. But you come out the next morning and say, good morning, and get in your car like you really a part of somebody else's community. Create a community of your own. That's all that's wrong with black folks. And you can't create that community unless you get rid of the white infection in your mind that makes you think you're a white man or a white woman in blackface. A white man and white woman in blackface. Stop it. It's not easy to stop it. But my saying stop it will make you think about the fact that you got to stop it. Okay? For the most part, we are a bunch of clone and holograms of white people. Pretending to be black, because white folks won't even let you pretend to be white. That's the truth. It sounds ugly and even brutal, but it is the real truth. I remember when I was a nigga. I was. And I did niggerly things. I chased the sisters. You remember me, Dr. Newton, back in the day? Drinking all that Cavassier and stuff at night? Serious, I'll tell the truth, I ain't lying. I was so bad, brother, your wife or your girlfriend wasn't safe if I was in the room. You go home crying or beat up by me. I was a terrible human being for a short time, because I was trying to figure me out. But by the time I was 21, I was finished with all of that. This thing in our brain called a mind must be informed by your ancestors, or you don't exist as a being. You're nothing more than a clone of somebody else's existence. The thing in your head called a mind must be informed, and it must be instructed by the experiences of your ancestors, or you don't exist. A bumblebee is only a bumblebee because it knows itself to be a bumblebee. Because it knows itself to be a bumblebee, it can do what a bumblebee does. A squirrel is a squirrel because it knows itself to be a squirrel. If it knew itself to be anything else, it would be a babbling, insane thing that you'd want to kill and put out of its misery. That's probably why most people try to kill us. Because we're not Africans. Your DNA is the best of your ancestral genes. And when each of you were born, it was the latest version and the highest tech model until you had your children. Then they became the best of those genes, the latest version and the highest tech model. Everybody in this room is made up of the gene of the first thing called life on the planet Earth. Everybody in this room contain the memory of everybody over millions of years that contributed to you arriving at who you are today. You cannot access that unless you have a culture that informs and instructs you on what is the rhythm and the frequency in which you should be communicating to you and with yourself. That's called culture and spirituality. So when you hear people drumming and humming and singing and dancing, it's not just music. If you went to Ashanti in Ghana and the king of Santahene comes out, when he comes out in the big derbas, he doesn't speak to anyone. He has this man, a linguist, who he whispers to. And that linguist whispers to the drummer, and the drummer plays the language on the drum, which is heard by the other guy, who then interprets it and whispers to his king, who then whispered back to him, he whispered to his drummer, and then these drummers take what they're saying and play it, and then this linguist hears it and whispers back to the king. You know why? Because our people were so slick. There's a brother named Nyangora Bura. Nyangora Bura. Don't ask me how to spell Nyangora's name. He wrote a book called Dramology. It's in French. He's from Ivory Coast. God bless his soul. He's an ancestor, and I was a professor at the University of Ivory Coast. And he wrote a 3-volume piece that everybody should get. It's called The African Gold Weight System. And in this book on drumology, he tells about the special drums, the talking drums, how they cure the skin and how they tune the skin so it vibrates at the same frequency of the human vocal cord. And that's how you can speak Twi with the drum. Now if you go up to the Achim region, up in the eastern region, with the Achimahini, who's their king of kings, they use the drums, but not as frequently. They use a horn. You know, like for the ones that the brothers who are Hebrews use, they use the horn. And they do the same thing with the horn. They make the horn vibrate the language. And people who speak that language can hear the horn. They hear the language. Yeah, that's how deep our ancestors were. And guess what? When they dumped us off of the boats over here, we didn't lose that. We took it in the Baptist church primarily. But see, we forgot what we hid. When I was initiated as a Yoruba priest, I was in the bush, in the woods, in a hut, on the ground, blindfolded, with drums playing almost 24/7, or people reading Odus, the scriptures, into my ear. And I had multiple kinds of experiences, out-of-body experiences over those 7 days. And I had realized when I came out of that, I had been through it already. It was called the Moaning Bench in the Baptist church in South Carolina. And when you read Jomo Kenyatta's book, and everybody in here should get that book, it's called Facing Mount Kenya. It's an old book, but it's a very important document, Facing Mount Kenya. And in that book, he talks about the age groups. So in my little village down in South Carolina, everybody at 13 got called into the church. And we had to pick a church father and a church mother. The girls all pick a church mother. In Africa, that's your traditional auntie. Here, that's your traditional uncle. But we did it through the church. We recreated the village in the church. I didn't know this when I was a child. I didn't know what. I just did what we had to do. And I remember my church father was Mr. Sam Keith. So anything that my father didn't do with me, he did with me. He actually had more jurisdiction over me than my father had. You know? Because my father would be too hard-handed, too heavy-handed. So he was removed from me in the emotional way so he could solve problems with me without being as heavy-handed. But at age 13, after a year being tutoring under these elders, we went to the moaning bench. There was always a bench like this on the front of the church. And you got on your knees. And each of your family sang their rhythm over you. I didn't know the rhythm. I didn't understand until one day I figured it out. I remember my rhythm was, save me, Lord, save myself from the burning hell. That's what my family sung. But it was the drum beat, the stomping of the feet and the clapping and the rhythm of that voice. That whole church would be going boom, boom. I mean, it vibrated everywhere. You could hear it in the trees and the woods outside. And on the 4th day, I got up. That means I got possessed. They call it having the Holy Ghost. But in Yoruba, they call it possess. In other parts of Africa, we got possessed by some power, some deity, some force, some Orisha, some Loa, some Obusum, some Netta. In this case, in the church, they said Jesus was the one that possessed you. But it's the same thing we did in Africa before we came here. We just wrapped the church around it. We had the age grade thing in there. We had the initiation into adult community in there. We had the year of consultation in there. All those are African things that we embedded in the church, and we forgot we put it there. But you're not going to know what you hid in this church unless you go and learn what Africa is all about. When you recognize your African self, you can find it anywhere it's buried. You all understand that? So you need to add that to your mapping. So as I bring this to conclusion, let me just let you understand that everybody in this room, that thing you call DNA, you know, every memory your grandmother had is a part of you. You know that if you were to pay respects and have an altar or shrine, whatever you want to call it, to your grandmother and grandfather in your house, and you go there every morning and tell them, good morning, Granny, how you doing? I'm going to give you some cool water. And when you eat dinner, dig a little bit of the food and put on a plate for them. You throw it outside to the birds later. It is the energy in your mind paying devotion to the energy that was your granny that is in you, that would allow you to tap into that reservoir of your ancestors, because you are your ancestors. They're not gone somewhere. You are they, but you're cut off from them because you got somebody else's culture, somebody else's spiritual tool, somebody else's way of knowing reality, that you can't even see the self that has always been yourself for millennia. I hope I'm not going too far, because y'all Christian people, y'all may think Brother Small's orbiting or something. You know. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? See, because you're not going to be free of the Trumps to come and all of the other Trumps until you free your mind of whiteness and how whiteness is. Now, a lot of what white people use is black stuff that they took and they've redone, you know. But you don't know that unless you go back to Africa and start studying about Africa and learn what your black stuff looks like, feels like, sounds like. Then you'll recognize it when you see it in other spaces and other places. You'll even recognize it when you see it in yourself. And it ain't got nothing to do with the texture of the skin, son. Light as you are, you black as that shirt. If you ever read a story of the brother called the Irritated Genie, everybody know who the Irritated Genie is? Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Coupetet Boulekai. What did Dessalines say after the war? He tells the French that the crime you've committed against us is too great, that my spirit will not allow you to share this land with me. So I've outfitted a whole ship. I want to send you all back to France. And I want all of you to get on that ship. I got food on there for you, I got water on there, enough for you to get to France. I got weapons on there for you to fight off your enemy. Those who don't go, I'm going to kill you, because you can't live with us, because the crime you've committed against us is too great. But he said to other white people, oh, he was a racist. No, he wasn't. Because he said to the Italians and the Polish, you, my brothers, y'all fought with us. Y'all fought beside us, so y'all black like us. So take your wives and your children, go home to your land and live free with us here in this land. There were white people who fought in the Haitian Revolution for us and who remained in Haiti as a part of us. But those who committed the crime against us, he said, our spirit cannot share the same space with you, so go home. Most got on the boat, but there were some arrogant enough to say, I'm not going. That's when he said, Coupetet, cut off their head, Boulekai, burn their houses. And he proceeded to do that. And he was betrayed and assassinated partly because of that. And that's when we lost the Haitian Revolution. But that's a longer story. That's a longer story. So Pétion, Boya, and even Christophe participated. And they later killed Christophe because he realized what he had done. So the mulattoes and the Catholic Church, who took Dessalines' body, cut it up into 14 pieces, scattered it around the island. But Cecilia Fatima Defele and his wife, They gathered the pieces up with other sisters, and they sewed him back together and wrapped him like a mummy, and they gave him a halfway decent burial. But Pétion and Boyer and the church came and dug him up and cut off his head and took the head into that basilica. You know the basilica that fell to the ground during the earthquake? If you know your history, it'll change everything you think about reality. There were African Americans that fought, yes, in the Haitian Revolution. We escaped here and went down there and fought with them and stayed there as free people. Christophe, he was from Grenada. Many of the people from the other islands went there and fought with those people. You know, they started the man they call Bookman, who they said started the revolution and did the prayer and all of that. Bookman was a Muslim from West Africa, probably northern part of Ghana, who was sold into Jamaica. He was such a rebel in Jamaica. Yes, sir. He was such a rebel in Jamaica, they did not want to kill him and make him a martyr, so they sold him into Haiti because the French was good at breaking people. But instead, they sold a man who followed the teaching of Macandal, who came before him, and followed the leadership of some women. It was the women that led that revolution in Haiti, not the men. They send the men in the men's place on the front line where men belong. But it was Cecile Fatima who organized the meetings in the alligator swamp, who herself came from Africa and was a Muslim. But in Africa, Muslims didn't separate themselves from the tradition. My priest, Haji Afar, who I need to call tomorrow, I need a little things done here and there. Haji Afar is a Muslim, been to Mecca, but he's a traditional priest and sees no contradiction in that. There's a lot for us to learn. We're going to defeat what Trump and that group of billionaires have planned for us if we come up with a plan for ourselves. If we are clear that it's about food, clothing, shelter, and safety for ourselves and our families, and that we must control economic, politics, and culture. And we can't begin to do that until we begin to learn our history. And a good way to start that historical process of learning is to form that group, to start the mapping. Set up study groups in your community by setting up study groups in your living room. At least 1 hour a week to 2 hours a week, you should watch one of those videotapes like I'm selling outside, which y'all gonna come and buy all from me before I go home because I'm gonna take it back to New York. And so, or read a good book. Don't the wife over here reading and the husband know why you in that black thing. Or the husband over there reading and the wife want to know why you in that black thing. Sit down and argue until y'all agree that there will be no sharing and no kind of things until we come to an agreement up in here. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? And at least 1 to 2 hours a week, devote that to studying about Africa. Your children not doing well in school because you sent them to your enemy? Well, you say, but James, I don't have any choice. I got to go to work and we don't have any other school. Then open your math class in your house, open the science class in your house. And every Saturday, give your children 2 hours to 3 hours of science and math in your living room. That's not hard to do. And if you're not that good in science and math, talk to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your neighbor people. Somebody know enough to do it. And if you got no space and the group grow too big, go to your church and say, look, we ain't tied no more unless we can use the church 1 day a week for our tutoring class for our children. And before you know it, 7 days a week, you're going to be tutoring those children. And you're going to be shocked at the end of the results. Take control of your lives or somebody else will continue to control it. It's freedom or death. It's your death if you don't demand of yourself your freedom. All the liberation you're looking for and all the reparations you desire is within you, and only you can give it to yourself. So thank you, brothers and sisters, very much. Thank you, Brother Giovanni.
Give it up for Brother James Smalls. Just real quick, we may be able to take a few questions because he has a train to catch to get back to New York. But look, there's no way that this is the last lecture of the year for Reality Speaks, and we appreciate y'all for coming out. But if some of these young scholars who study Dr. James Smalls, Brother James Smalls, and Dr. Patricia Newton trying to get $5,000 and $3,000 and $4,000. You know, I want to send Brother Smalls back to New York, right? And on his heels, not just Dr. Smalls, but what we're doing with Watoto from the Nile. Because him, you know, giving me the knowledge and information and inspiration inspired me to do Watoto from the Nile. So if it ain't about us from the elders passing it down to the youth who are going to be here when we gone, it don't mean anything. So we want to do a donation for, I mean, we had a great year with Reality Speaks. We had, well, we'll go on to that. But what we want to do is we want to start the donation in here now. And look, don't, you know, yes, sir.
Brother DeBart, if you don't mind, can I have a couple minutes to speak to the brothers?
We can't do it right now because we in time constraint right now. Yeah.
Maybe just get everybody's phone. Because
Yeah, we got to move forward because he has a train to catch, and we try. Yeah, that definitely appreciate that. But we'll talk and see how to do that. If we can move forward. So anybody here, and we don't want anybody to get mad. This is raising donations. The end of the year, we moving forward. We want to start off with anybody. If you got a check, we do have our swipe machine outside. So anybody got a card, and then we're gonna start off the donation at $100 or more donation. Anybody would like to donate to Reality Speaks, to Watoto from the Nile, to Professor James Smalls, and us sending him back to New York properly in the way we should. So, we had a great year with Reality Speaks. We had from Dr. Patricia Newton, starting off with Dr. Patricia Newton. We had Claude Anderson. We had Scott Whitaker. We had Dr. Boyce Watkins here in town. We had two very huge showings. We had the biggest showings of Hidden Colors in the country, all over. We had one with over 800 people. Then we had one with over 500 people here in Baltimore City. We put a lot of work in. We had anybody I'm missing? Brother Issa. Who else am I missing? We had Dr. Mayat in the building. We had Brother Polite. We had who am I missing? We had Dr. Africa, Dr. Laila Africa. We had him. We had Ashrock Quays at the beginning of the year. I talked to him and he swore me out he didn't come this year. He said, no, that was last year, bro. And he confused me, but yeah, it was last year. Okay, all right, he was right there. I was like, then you coming? Yeah, okay. All right, so anybody, $100 or more donation like to give to? Well, we'll get to that. We'll pass it around at the end. Anybody, $50 or more donation they'd like to give to the efforts? My brother Zai, give him a big round of applause, big supporter, $50 donation. Appreciate that. Anybody else, $50 or more donation they would like to donate to the efforts we have here? Reality Speaks. All right. So look, we have also, like I said, the Watoto from the Nile. You heard how many people love Sister Mary when she sung that great song today? All right, so we want to continue to support that. So, we have their Chosen One CD out for sale. And we also have the Unify or Die concert coming up on January the 7th. So you want to get your tickets, they $10 a night if you get them tonight. All right, anybody else, $20 more donation, $20 donation. My big brother, give him a big round of applause. Pastor of what church? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. I'm sorry about that. Give it up, my brother, unanimous. I'm not gonna say his name. What's your name in the front, brother? Joel. Give him a big round of applause. And the family, give him a big round of applause. And my favorite, one of my favorite women in the world, my angel, Mama Maya. Give her a big round of applause. My mother is in the building for her $20 and consistent donations. My brother in the back. What's your name? Atiba, Brother Atiba, been coming out. Give Brother Atiba a big round of applause. And my sister, what's her name? Karen. Sister Karen, big round of applause for Sister Karen. Anybody else? Brother Wayne in the back, we appreciate that. We have a brother here. What's your name, brother? Lester. Give Brother Lester a big round of applause, fam. Oh, brother, give it up to Mr. Idris. Big round of applause, Mr. Idris. We appreciate him. And anybody, I missed somebody? Dr. Patricia Newton, give a big round of applause. $20 donation. And my sister, Sister Danielle. Give Sister Danielle a big round of applause. Did I miss anybody? $10 or more donation. We had the tens. My sister, what's your name? Rhonda. Sister Rhonda, $10 donation. Did I miss anybody? All right. So now what we can do, don't forget to get your Unified Die t-shirt. On that day, January the 7th, we want to be in the concert, Unified Die. Look, we did this before. When we did a talent show, we had our young group. Back in the day, my brother, what's your name? Huh? Shadi. Shadi. Give him a big round of applause, family. Inside the club, you know what I mean, all of our people were there. You know what I mean, the so-called thugs, they were there, and Soul Vibers Nation were there. We overwhelmed the club, and we had about 50 people in there with the organization Unified Die shirts. I mean, we overwhelmed the club, won the whole concert and everything. So we want to do that at this concert in January. Did I miss anybody else? Now we can pass the bucket. We can pass the bucket around. Anybody who has any change or just want to throw some love in there and may not have had it today, give yourselves a round of applause. Everybody clap it up for yourselves. We appreciate you. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we got, Doc, we pushing it close. What you want to take? 2 real quick?
Yeah, we can take 1 or 2.
Well, you want to get some more DVDs?
Yeah, we can do that too.
Okay, because we got about 10 minutes.
Okay, let's do 10 minutes. I'll keep it short. You keep it short. No dissertation, otherwise I'm going to sit you down. No dissertation, just questions.
All right, so if you got questions, please come up to the front right quick. Okay.
I know, right? All right, so I'm a teacher in the public school system, and there's always, a tug of war between your beliefs and what it is. So my question is, what type of history curriculum can we give to the kids in the classrooms that give them more insight into Africa and so forth? Because, I have the freedom to kind of teach what I want in history, but I need something more cohesive so it's not bits and pieces.
Patricia, you can tell me the name of the book. There's a textbook written explicitly for the classroom by all the standards by Malefi Asante, Sister Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Jeffries, Sister Ama Mazama. It is the best textbook I've ever seen written on history for the classroom, and it's written to the standards of the classroom, except they haven't accepted it in the classroom. In order to buy it, you got to buy the whole box. They won't sell it 1 book at a time. But it's by Dr. Malefi Asante, so that should make it. It's called, I think it's African American History, or History. You got to call me at home. He's sitting right there on the desk. Yeah, but you want Dr. Malefi Asante. He's the king of the mountain. I know some people get mad with Malefi, but Malefi is the man when it comes to that type of research. That book is done. You don't have to recreate the wheel with that. It is written according to the U.S. standards. It can fit in. If they took it, it can take the place of that. I think Simon & Schuster is the one they use now, and it's not that bad. Actually, the one they did, because they were being challenged. So I think they put out a pretty good one. But the one by Malefi Asante and them is good. The chief thing for any teachers, because all of my children except 2 are school teachers, and I got 8 of them, and we deal with this all the time. Get your stuff straight, and then you can do all the innovations that you want with the material that you have. But anybody can take my number if y'all want it. Y'all ready? Get ready. I'm gonna give you my phone number. And if you call me, I can give you the book over the phone. And I put it on the internet. People call me every day. I mean, because what sense does it make to tell people you're there and nobody know how to reach you? That's silly. So it's 914-960-2693. But the basic is now, African American history is not that difficult. LaRon Bennett, Shaping of Black America. LaRon Bennett, Before the Mayflower. Those are very good pieces. Robin Walker, When We Rule. Robin is a survey of a couple of thousand years. He lives in the UK, of African world history. Anything by Cheikh Anta Diop, that may not be appropriate in the classroom, but it's appropriate for your mind formulation. Cheikh Anta Diop of Senegal, Any other questions?
Got a next question? All right, just you guys from there.
Basically, in subreddits, involved in hawk heights, Lexington Terrace, down the hill, and I've been talking to a lot of other guys about, economics and try to start, own businesses, what's the greatest step in the direction
Right. you have to start off where you are and find that person who can qualify to get a vendor's license, and then let the others work under your vendor license. All business is about selling stuff. Like this is Christmas. Black Barbie dolls. Go to the Chinese warehouse and buy up a whole bunch of them and sell them. You'd be surprised how much money can be earned by just selling the basic tools of a community. And since they put us in a situation with the vendor, if we can get 1 or 2 brothers to get vendor's license, then hire those other brothers to work under your vendor's license. And you're in business. And you don't have a bunch of overhead. You don't have to pay no rent, electric bill, light bill, or nothing. Except when it gets cold. Then you're kind of in trouble there. But once you get into the rhythm of it, if you go in with the strategy of saving our money, saying we're going to save 20% or 30% of whatever we earn doing this, and that money goes into acquiring an indoor facility, and give yourself a year or a year and a half to do that. But it has to be, your goal has to be clear that we're going into business. And we can sell anything from t-shirts to caps to shoes to tapes to books to paintings. People buy all kinds of things. And some people I did probably most of my life, I vend. I still vend, you know. Even when I was teaching in university, I vend. Anybody could say I'd be on 125th Street every weekend, you know, because I had to feed those children. I got 8, 2 in Africa, and I want to tell everybody, my daughter in Africa just won a seat in Parliament too. And she a bad girl too. Her name is Barbara Asher, you can look her up, and she's probably going to be, hopefully, the Ministry of Tourism for Ghana. And she would do a good job, because she's my mind. You know, she ran the best election this year. She was the first person to be declared a winner. And she's one of the youngest men or women in Parliament in Ghana this year. There's another young brother from another region not far from her who also won a seat in Parliament this year. But what we have to do is understand that sell things to one another. Most of the things we need personally, we buy from other people. Why not buy it from one another? And so we have to learn the skills. Marketing is not that complicated. You don't need a university degree. You just need to know the people who you need to market to. You know? That's a simple.
All right. This gonna have to be fast because we got like 2 minutes, but you can go ahead, Ace.
I'd like to ask the president, do you happen to know of any African group or leader that knows how to start a bank?
There was a brother, he's from Trinidad, I think it's called the U.S. Bank. You got 2 black banks in New York. I don't know how many you have here in Baltimore. 1? Well, that's the person. You've got a Carver Bank. Harbor. Okay. So there's black bankers all over Ghana. You'd be surprised. People don't think. I have a friend, a sister that runs, we have a hotel in Ghana, so I'm not just speaking my business. I'm the CEO of the Sana Lodge Enterprise Limited, Ghana, and we have a 30-room villa, and we have a swimming pool, cocktail lounge, pool, bar, full complement restaurant, and a conference center that can hold nearly 150, about 500 persons on any given day. And it's 80 of us involved. Imagine putting 80 black people together and do something and you don't kill each other, and we've been at it for 10 years. We only had 1 bad apple who we bought out. The rest of us are still struggling. We just came through Ebola that almost wiped us out, but we're bouncing back. So you can do business. Our hotel is in Cape Coast, Ghana, between Elmina and the Cape Coast slave dungeon. So business is about selling the necessities to yourself, you know? It's not complicated. Everything is about selling something. And we need to take advantage of, don't be ashamed or afraid to be out there on that street, you know, selling to people something they need. So look for the black bankers. There's a group called Buy Black 365. Go ahead, girl. All righty. This is my goddaughter here. I knew her when she was in her mama's belly. I knew her mama when her mama was in her mama's belly. You know, Buy Back 365. They have a listing of black businesses all over the country. Another one of my goddaughters, Nataki Cambone, is one of the leaders of that group, who couldn't be here tonight because she's all busy. I know I got to go. But they're there. Buy Black 365, and you'll have a way to contact black businesses, black banks with ratings all over America. So just go online and hook them up. But thank you very much, brothers and sisters, for coming out. Thank you very much for being here. My wife demands I come back home tonight.
Give it up for Brother James Smalls. Give it up, give it up. Stand, let's close out, family. For those that's interested, we have been rebuilding Survivors Nation, so those who are looking for a brotherhood, a sisterhood, and an organization, we do have a list on the outside. Please sign that list. If we stand still, we're going to close out with our Harambe's, means let us all pull together. You can put your fist in the air, if you could please, fam. All right, let's close out correctly. 1, 2, 3. Harambe, 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 Harambe.